All right, so let's start with the big story that we are tracking on WION at this hour. The International Criminal Court has opened an investigation into possible war crimes committed in Ukraine by the Russians. Now, this comes after the court's member states requested for it to take up this case. Prosecutor Karim Khan, in fact, took to Twitter and said that active investigations formally commence in Ukraine on the receipt of referrals by 39 state parties. The referrals by about 39 member states fast-track an investigation, and this is because it allows the prosecutor to skip having to seek approval of the court in The Hague, which can take many months. The Khan statement mentioned that the prosecutor's office will start collecting evidence for any past and present allegations of war crimes, crimes against humanity or genocide committed in any part of the territory by any person in Ukraine. The countries include all EU member nations along with Australia, the United Kingdom, Canada, New Zealand, Switzerland and several Latin American nations. On Wednesday, the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson told the Parliament that the Russian President Vladimir Putin was guilty of war crimes.
Putin has gravely miscalculated. In his abhorrent assault on a sovereign nation, he has underestimated the extraordinary fortitude of the Ukrainian people and the unity and resolve of the free world in standing up to his barbarism.
Russia, meanwhile, is the next Crimea back in 2014, remember, and this was followed by fighting between the pro-Russian separatists and the Ukrainian government forces in the eastern part of Ukraine, known as the Donbas region. Ukraine accepted the ICC jurisdiction for crimes against humanity and war crimes committed on its territory since the end of 2013. In December 2020, the prosecutor's office had announced that it had reason to believe that war crimes and other crimes committed during the conflict had indeed taken place. However, a request for a full investigation had not been filed. Now, what is interesting in all of this is that Russia is not a member of the International Criminal Court and rejects its jurisdiction. Now, Moscow withdrew from ICC, and the court will only be able to reach Russians if they are arrested on the territory of a state that respects the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court. The court can still investigate into allegations of war crimes regardless of the nationality of the suspect. Russian invasion into Ukraine has reached its second week, and no one knows as to what the end game of this invasion will be. But so far, Russia has not been able to overthrow the Ukrainian government. Thousands of people have been killed or injured. And at this point of time, it appears that because of the manner in which the Russians are tightening their presence around the big cities in Ukraine, that we could now be reaching a critical stage in this war. Now, to give us more insights in terms of what's actually happening in terms of the war and what Putin's plans would be over the course of the next few days, we're joined by Mr. Lester Munson. He's a senior fellow at the National Security Institute. He's joining us live from Washington, D.C. Mr. Munson, this is day 8 of Russia's invasion into Ukraine. And although over the course of the last few days we saw the Ukrainians putting up a stiff resistance against the Russian onslaught, the information that is now coming in is that Russia is making progress, albeit pretty slowly. But more importantly, it appears looking to create a corridor connecting the Donbas region with the Crimean Peninsula, and it may succeed in doing so. What do you make of this?
Yes, this so-called land bridge from Donbas to Crimea has long been thought to be one of the goals of Russia for its invasion of Ukraine. It would more easily facilitate the transportation of material to Crimea, which is strategically important to Russia, although, of course, it is part of Ukraine and it should not be such. But that is for sure one of the goals of Putin's invasion. There are, of course, other things going on inside Ukraine, aside from just this, the establishment of this land bridge to Crimea.
And also, there are reports which state that Kherson has fallen to the Russian forces. There is a lot of pressure by the Russians also on the port city of Mariupol as well. Why do you think it is important for the Russians to, in fact, pick on these key port cities and with that create a corridor linking Donbas with Crimea?
Well, the Black Sea, the Sea of Azov, this area is strategically important to the Russians in their view of the world and Vladimir Putin's view of the world. and the naval base at Sevastopol is likely something that he would like to augment. So this, I suppose, from a purely military point of view, this makes some sense. However, that does not change the fact that this is an invasion of a sovereign nation. This invasion actually started in 2014 when Russia went into Crimea and the Donbass. This is a continuation of that effort here 8 years later.
And also, we've heard of this convoy of Russian troops that is said to be almost about 40 miles long. On the outskirts of Kiev, it has not made a lot of progress in the last 36 hours. Do you expect the Russians to now step up their offensive on the capital city?
Well, that seems like a very likely possibility. There's no doubt that Russia has the resources to mount such an attack. It appears that they have every intention of doing so. However, we can't not note the problems they have had thus far with the invasion of Ukraine. It has gone much slower, clearly, than their plans had indicated. They're having much more trouble making progress. The Ukrainians, as you pointed out, are putting up one heck of a fight. And I think they are energized by the reception they're getting around the world. There is material support, weapons support coming into the Ukrainians now that they were unlikely to have received just a couple of weeks ago. So it's unclear to me exactly what is going to happen. What we're seeing is stiff resistance from the Ukrainians, but also a lot of resources on the Russian side.
And also, this war is not just about military tactics and how Russia is going about it, but also the issue of politics. We expect that the Russian and the Ukrainian delegation will meet today for the second round of the peace talks. The chatter over these peace talks is that Russia wants Volodymyr Zelensky to step down and it wants to install another person who is more friendly towards Moscow. Is that what the end game or the objective of the Russians appears to be at this point of time with this war in Ukraine?
It's a very good question. It's really unclear to me. Russia has not been candid throughout this whole process. That's a nice way of saying they've been lying this entire time about their intentions in Ukraine. So I treat it with a grain of salt what the Russians may or may not be saying about these negotiations that are going to take place. I suppose it is good that negotiations are taking place. I don't think anyone is very hopeful that they will lead to anything at all positive.
All right, we'll have to leave there. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Munson, for joining us from Washington, D.C. and getting us all those insights. This, of course, is a story that we'll continue to track.
Thank you very much.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.